Hi there, today I'm going to show you how to turn our simple race car game from the last video into a car collection game. Now this video will have a number of steps, so you may want to stop at various points. Now our first step is going to be to edit our original game from last week, because we're going to use a number of the assets. Now the first thing I'm going to do is create a second sprite as an enemy. So I'm actually going to copy the sprite I've got here. So I'm going to duplicate it. And then in good fashion, I'm going to rename this because I want this to be the evil car or the enemy car. As long as the name makes some sense to you, it doesn't really matter what you call it. And then I'm going to go to the costumes, and very simply, I'm going to change the color so I can see the difference. Now I'm in bitmap mode here, so the fill tool will allow me to very quickly fill the car a different color. So there you go, there's my enemy car, nice and simple. Now, a number of the scripts I've got on here, or the code on here, I don't need, so I'm going to just dump all of those blocks that I'm not interested in. I'm going to keep these for now because I may need those a bit later. Okay, so I've got one of my sprites. The other thing we need to do is look at the background. So what I'm going to do for the background is I'm going to paint a new one. And again, I'm going to convert this to a bitmap so I can use the fill tool. I'm going to start with green. And then I'm going to choose a paintbrush tool. I'm going to get some grey. And where's our grey? There's our grey. I'm going to make the paintbrush tool about 50 and 100 for speed. And I'm just basically going to, I want to create some green areas, and then I mainly want an area so I can collect things. I'm going to keep green in the center, so I'm going to sort of draw around this and have a green bit in the center. You could do this by filling it in grey and then adding green bits. I'm doing it the opposite way. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. This is where the creativity can come in, so let's just do this as well. Have a bit of green. Cool. So there is my level. Now, the only other thing we need is we need some objects to collect. Okay, so again, I'm just going to make a new object using the paintbrush tool. This could be anything from a piece of a coin, or it could be a little oil can, anything you want really. I'm going to go with a coin just to keep that computer game idea going. Let's get a gold coin. I'm going to click convert to a bitmap again so I can just do a simple coin, and I could write a number onto it, but for now I'm going to keep it like this. Now this is quite big. I can resize it, of course, so let's get a bit smaller. And it's important to make sure it goes in the center, so we've got it's around the center point, so that's the little mark in the center. So if it moves or does anything, it's going to look right. So I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. It's nice to see the preview up on the screen there. That's probably good enough. Cool. Okay, so here is my coin. And for now, I'm just going to have one, because once we've got it working, then we can duplicate it and have more. So I'm going to call this a coin. Okay, so here I've got all my parts. I've got a backdrop, I've got an enemy sprite, I've got my player-controlled car that still works in exactly the same way as before, and I've got a coin. So what we'd like to happen is we'd like this character here, this sprite, to collect these sprites and a score to go up. We'll come onto the score a bit later. And this car, we'd like it to move around the screen fairly randomly, but when it touches our car, for it to kill it or to have some impact, maybe reduce the score, or it could lose a life and reset the car. So let's start with our car. We're going to go to our code, and we need to initialize the sprite. Now we've got our movement blocks, which is absolutely fine. We don't need to muck around with these. This is the sprite we had, the code we had before to make it avoid green. Now that's useful. I think that's worth keeping in this game. So all I want to make sure is, are we initializing the sprite properly? So when we start the game, where does it start? So I'm going to actually start it down in this corner, and I want to make sure it's pointing in a certain direction as well. So I'm going to point it in direction. So point in direction, which is 0, which is upwards. So if I just click this sprite, it's gone to the wrong place because, of course, I didn't change this one, but it is pointing upwards. So let's go to here. You see that's changed. So now this, if I move it to here, click this, that's where I want it. So that's where it's going to start. So that's fine. So this is initializing the sprite, and then this bit should work in exactly the same way. We do need to update this because duplicate always is problematic at times. So now if I just run this bit of the script, we should be able to move the car around, and then when it hits the green, it should restart. Now, the reason why it's not working right now is there must be a subtle difference between the green I've chosen there and the green on here. So if I click, and let's stop the program, let's click here, choose the color picker, and then go and choose the color again. There must be some slight difference. There was a minor change there. So now, if we just run this bit of code and click that once, move along, good. That's absolutely fine. It's now reacting to the green space, which is good. So the basic car is working. We can get rid of this bit of script because we don't have that color purple anymore. So let's get rid of that. So this is working fine at the moment. Now, to get this guy moving, we need to so this is now working fine. Now, to get the purple car moving, we need to make some changes to the code. Now, we don't need this bit of code. We already got rid of the movement. Now, do we need any of this? Do we want it to avoid the green? At this point, actually, I don't want that. I'm not worried about that. So I'm actually going to get rid of everything except for my green flame clicked icon. And basically what we want to happen is we want it to move. We want it to move forever. And when we get to the edge of the play area, we want it to bounce on the edge. So let's just pull this together and click it, and we can see it move. So for straight away, it's pretty much moving how we want. This is very similar to something that the children would have done in year 5. Now we do need to do a little bit of initialization to get this working properly. So let's get initialized properly. So we're going to look at motion. We want to make sure that is only rotating left to right. And we do need a position for it to start. So I think it's going to start over here. So that's going to be, so I've just moved in that position, so it's going to start in the corner. And I also want to make sure it's pointing in a certain direction. If I keep it at 90, it's just going to go backwards and forwards. So I'm actually going to point it ever so slightly downwards. Okay, so I'm going to say 90, in fact, I'll move it. So that's minus 90. So I'm just going to make it come down a bit. Okay, I might even say minus 100. Okay, that didn't work because I did that wrong. Minus 100. Okay, so now if I clip all that together, this is initializing at the top. If I click this, so now it's moving around, appearing to be fairly random. Now, it is moving a bit quick, so I'm going to change that to a 5, and then that way it should be avoidable a little bit better. Now, we could muck around with how that moves. We could look at the direction. We could even randomize the direction a little bit, but for now, we're going to keep it like that. So, I have got my enemy moving, I've got my car moving, and I've got the coin. So let's get some sensing happening. Now for the sensing, we've got 2 things we want to sense. We want this to kill this car or remove a score, and we want, when we collect this, we want it to add 1 to a score. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways of doing this. The easiest way is to do it on the coin. Okay, so the coin is doing the reacting. So we need to start with an event. This needs to happen forever, and we need something to happen. So if, okay, so if something happens, we want the coin to vanish, be collected, and of course add something to a score. So let's get that vanishing working first. Now we use the word hide in Scratch, and I'm going to grab this show on because we're going to need this in a minute as well. So what's the sensing? Well, we want this to touch, of course, the car, don't we? So if we get touching, and we can choose one of these. This is why you name things correctly, so you can easily choose what you want to happen. So we're going to go with car. So this is going to be checking this. This is a question it's checking. So if it's touching the car, then it's going to hide. Okay. So let's just see if that works. Let's start the program up and hit green flag, which will start most things moving. But now I should be able to go forward and it vanishes, which is great. Now, if I get stop, the small problem we've got is the coin does not reappear because it's not been initialized properly. So when we start the program, we need it to show and go to a certain position. Now, we can do this in a couple of different ways. I'm going to start with the simple version. I'll explain the more complicated one later on in the video. But we can just have it set to where we drew it. So if we look at motion, we can have it set to, this is where we want it. It's going to be in this location. So if I click it, it's going to appear. So it goes to a specific location every single time, and it shows. Okay. Now, so now this is going to initialize properly. It's going to be checking this, and it's going to hide. Now, if you want the coin to reappear after a certain amount of time, we'd have to add that piece of information in. For now, I want them to all vanish and not reappear. But what I would like to happen is for the score to go up, because for games we need some scores. Now this is where we need to add a variable. Now variables are under the little orange tab here. You need to make a variable. Now again, name variables what they are. So we're going to call this a score, and I'm going to spell it correctly. And this is a variable for all sprites because it's going to relate to the whole game. You rarely use this, to be fair. And so now we've got a score. So now that's appeared on screen, which is great because we need to keep track of that. You can move that around, so you can have it in the middle if you want. And then it gives us some information. So I'm going to change my score by 1, which means add 1. If you wanted to subtract 1, you say -1. Change the score by -1. So now when I collect this, it should go up by 1. So let's again just run the program. Let's go up. And good, our score goes up 1. If we stop the program, it works as we expect. If we restart it, we will reset, but our score is still 1. This is because we haven't initialized the program properly again. And somewhere in the program, we need to tell when we start the game to set the score to 0. Now, this can be done technically on any sprite, but you need to think logically about where does it make sense to go. I normally put this information on the background because it's something that's global. Everything in the game it relates to, even though just this coin is the thing that's changing the score. So in backdrops, I'm simply going to set my score to 0, and I'm going to set that with an event block. So when I click the green flag, the score will set to 0. And that's it, simple as that. And I put it on the backdrop because it's affecting the whole game. If you can put it on the coin or the car, but then it gets a bit confusing. Where did I put that information? So if I click stop, restart, the score is 0, I can go up, collect the coin and move around. If I touch the green area, oh, I go off the road, which is great. So we've got the workings of a game here. The only thing we're missing is, of course, the evil card doesn't do anything. Now what we're going to do, we're going to borrow a bit of code from the coin because we need it to do some sensing. Now slightly counterintuitively, I'm going to put this code on the car, not the evil car. The enemy, as it moves around the screen, it's going to have some actions, but the results of which need to affect the car. So it's far easier to put the sensing on the car and make it react when it touches the enemy, the evil car, than the other way around. So I'm going to drag this bit of code, this script, onto the car. That's a cheating way of doing it to get it quicker. So we've got quite a lot on this page now. If you ever need a bit more space, you can click up here and it shrinks down the stage area, and so you can focus on the coding. So what I want to happen is when our main player sprite, the car, touches the other car, something to happen. So I'm just going to change this over. Again, because I've got my names, it's very easy to switch between the various sprites. And so when it touches the car, we want something to happen. Now, I don't want it to hide, nor do I want it to change the score. I can make it remove points, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it get rid of lives. So I'm just going to remove a few bits, and we're going to do something with those in a moment as well. But what we're going to do is make a variable. Now, I've already made the variable called lives here. To make a variable, you click here, give it a name, and click OK. I'm just going to ticket to allow the lives variable to appear. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on the little arrow and choose lives. So I would like, when we touch the evil car, to change the lives by -1. Okay, makes perfect sense. We want to do a little bit more than that, because what I'd like to do is reset the car back to the start position. Now this bit of code initializes the program, and this is where it resets our car. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to detach that and get rid of that bit. We don't need that. I'm just going to duplicate those 2 blocks and put it in here. So when I touch the evil car, it will remove 1 of my lives, and of course it's going to reset back to the beginning. I don't need these bits because this is to do with setting the start position of the coin. So let's get rid of all that, and let's snap all this back together again. So this should work. The only other thing you might be thinking about is, oh, you're going to start with 0 lives. Well, we don't want to start with 0 lives. We want to start with 2 or 3 or 4 lives. So I've already done this on the background. So on the background, I've added another one of the set blocks. So when I initialize the program, we set the score to 0, and we also set the lives to 3. Again, that block could technically go on any sprite. You could put it on the car sprite. It does make some sense to put it there. When you initialize the car, you set the lives to 3. But again, it's about where the code needs to go to make sense. Again, it's something that affects the entire game, so it's something I've put on the background. So if we make the window a bit bigger and we click green flag, so we've got 3 lives and the score is 0. If I go up here, I should be able to click the coin, and then if I touch the purple card, this is always the difficult bit. Can I actually get to touch it on purpose? Yeah, there you go. And I've suddenly reset back to the beginning. And I've also lost a life. So let's do it again. There you go. I've lost another life. So we've got the makings of a game. Now, the only thing we need to do now is to create more coins. Now, if we click on the coin, we've got this piece of code. If I right click and duplicate, I will create a second coin, and coin 2 is a perfectly acceptable name. The only thing you need to change is this part, because of course at the moment when I click the green flag, it resets, but now I've got 2 coins going in the same place. So you need to sort of put one, move one, and grab the other one. Again, you know which one you've selected by the blue box. I'm going to move it to there, and then you're going to have to just update this. Now, you don't have to drag on the blue block. You can just copy the information on here as well, because whenever I move the coin, that updates. So it's probably a bit quicker just to change the number. And then we've got 2. And let's duplicate this again. So there's a second one. So coin 3. Here's coin 3. Got to put there. I'm going to put that there. And then I'm going to look. Okay, that's the number. I'm just going to add a couple more. -127. And do one more. So there's coin 2. That's 4. All goes there. Let's put another one here. Look at the visualization of where it's going to go. So now, when we set the game, all the coins appear. And hopefully I can. Oh, oh, I'm off the road, I'm off the road. Avoid the car, avoid the car. So this is, as you start playing, you might realize, oh, the enemy's a bit too slow or a bit too fast. So you might need to change this around. Yay, and I've got all of them. Now, this is the point where you could start thinking about what else can you add to the game to make it more challenging. So you could add a start screen, a game over screen, a you win screen. You could make the difficulty increase over time. So we could put a timer on as it gets quicker. The speed of the enemy gets quicker. You could add more coins. You could actually make the coins randomly appear on the screen, so they're not always in a fixed location. You could make the coins reappear after a certain amount of time randomly somewhere on the screen. So there's many different things you can do to enhance the game. I hope that's enough information and that gives you a starting point for your own games, and I look forward to seeing some of your work.